Kara Linley didn't mean to launch her entire coffee at a stranger's chest, but the lid popped off, and the latte exploded like a caffeine volcano right as she collided into a wall of muscle and Armani. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," she gasped, frozen mid-step as her now empty cup clattered to the marble floor of the upscale mall. The man looked down at the brown stains soaking into his crisp white shirt. He was tall, broad-shouldered, absolutely not someone you'd want to douse in hot liquid. Kara braced for yelling. Instead, he blinked once, then looked up. "Hot?" he asked calmly. She stared at him, stunned by how unfazed he was, and also how annoyingly good-looking. Strong jaw, messy dark hair, a straight nose that looked like it had never been broken. His voice was smooth, low, and slightly amused. "Ooh, yes, I mean it was, but not boiling. Still, I'm so sorry, I wasn't looking, my fault, 100%. He glanced at the puddle, then at the splash on his shirt, then back at her. "It's fine." "I was overdue for a wardrobe change anyway," Kara blinked. "Are you serious?" "Very." He looked like he was trying not to laugh. Unless that was on purpose, in which case, bold strategy, coffee attack to get a guy's attention, her cheeks flushed. "I swear I wasn't trying to assault you with caffeine." He grinned, actually grinned, and pulled a handkerchief from his pocket, blotting the front of his shirt like he'd done this 1,000 times. "Don't worry about it. Happens more often than you'd think. Seriously." She folded her arms, half embarrassed, half defensive. "What, you hang around coffee-wielding women often?" He gave her a look, then tilted his head. "Only the interesting ones." She had no idea what to say to that. "I'm Xavier Lowell," he said, holding out his hand. Kara hesitated, then shook it. "Kara Linley, and I still feel awful." "Then let me make you feel better," he said casually. "Join me for coffee, a replacement for the one you just sacrificed to the shopping gods." She laughed. "You're kidding." "I'm not. It's the least I can do, considering you just made my day. By drenching you in espresso." Exactly, it needed drama. He was charming. Too charming. There had to be a catch. She glanced down at her jeans and Converse, then at his designer shoes that probably cost more than her rent. "You're not one of those guys who stalk women in malls, right?" "Only when they throw coffee at me," he said with a wink. "Come on, there's a cafe upstairs, we'll call it Truce Coffee." And maybe it was because her day had already been a disaster, or because something about him felt strangely safe, but she nodded. "Okay, Truce Coffee." They walked side by side up the escalator. She noticed how people glanced at him like they recognized him, or maybe just sensed something different about him. Confidence poured off him like cologne. He didn't brag, didn't name drop, but everything from his tailored coat to his watch was that a Rolex screamed money. Still, he didn't act like the rich guys Kara had waited tables for all through college. He held the cafe door open for her, let her order first, insisted on paying, and didn't flinch when she picked the fancy seasonal drink that cost more than her lunch budget for the week. "So," he said once they sat at a quiet booth in the corner, "what brings you to the mall on a Tuesday afternoon?" Kara sipped her drink, still unsure if this was real. "I work retail. I had a shift this morning. Then I decided to kill time before heading home." "You work here?" "Not at this mall," she said quickly. "I work at Trendy Threads. It's like budget fashion. This place is way out of my league." He leaned forward. "You don't seem out of place." "I'm wearing jeans that are older than my niece." "Still doesn't matter." She raised an eyebrow. "You're not from around here, are you?" He smiled. "Born here, I just don't get out much." There was something about the way he said it, like he didn't mean he stayed home, but rather that people like him didn't blend in easily. Something about his tone made her pause. "You don't work at one of those law firms upstairs, do you?" she asked. "No, finance." He shook his head. She narrowed her eyes. "You're not going to give me a straight answer, are you?" He shrugged. "Not yet." "Why?" "Because I like that you have no idea who I am." Her stomach flipped. "Is this the part where you tell me you're famous?" "No," he said with a slow smile. "Just complicated." They spent over an hour talking about food, movies, weird childhood stories. She learned he liked classic rock, hated mushrooms, and once ran away from boarding school for a weekend just to eat real pizza in Brooklyn. He asked her about her dreams. She told him she used to want to be a designer, but life had other plans. He didn't press. just listened. When they finally stood, she realized she hadn't thought about her spilled coffee or her wreck of a day since he'd started talking. They walked back toward the escalators. She expected him to say goodbye. Instead, he stopped near the entrance. "Let me take you to dinner sometime," he said. Kara blinked. "Seriously?" "You owe me a dry cleaning bill," he said, eyes gleaming. "Might as well make it worth it. You're not going to tell me what you do, are you?" "Nope. What if you're secretly a magician or something? Then I'll make you fall in love with me," he said, so smoothly she almost dropped her cup again. Her heart did a weird lurch. "You're bold," he leaned in slightly. "Only when it matters." She stared at him, still not sure if she was walking into a dream or a trap, but something about him, something unexplainable, felt like gravity. "Fine," she said. "One dinner," he grinned. "Friday," she nodded. He walked her to her car, didn't try anything, just opened the door and said, "I'll pick you up." "You don't have my number." "I'll find you," he said, then walked away like he absolutely meant it, and somehow Kara believed him. By the time Friday arrived, Kara had convinced herself she'd dreamed the whole thing. No texts, no calls, just a cryptic promise from a stranger in a ruined designer shirt. But at exactly 6 o'clock, a sleek black town car pulled up to the curb outside her apartment building, and a man in a dark suit stepped out, holding a discreet white card. "For Miss Linley," he said with a courteous nod. Kara stared at the name printed in sharp, understated lettering. Lowell. Her heart knocked once hard against her ribs. She hadn't given him her address. She hadn't even told him her last name. The driver opened the rear door before she could ask any questions. Inside, the car smelled faintly of leather and some scent she couldn't place, clean, expensive, and unfamiliar. And sitting there, legs crossed, was Xavier. "You really weren't kidding," she said, sliding in cautiously. "I rarely do," he replied, offering her a brief glance before returning his attention to the skyline outside. "Nice building. You decorated that window box on the 3rd floor," she blinked. "You were watching research," he said lightly. "Had to make sure you weren't secretly dangerous. And you decided I wasn't. We'll see after dinner." She tried to hide her nerves by fiddling with the clasp on her purse. "You enjoy being vague, don't you? Only with people who ask too many questions." She raised an eyebrow, but he didn't elaborate. The car turned toward the waterfront, and Kara caught a glimpse of the glinting bay. When the vehicle pulled up in front of a discreet stone building with ivy crawling up its sides and a valet waiting by the steps, she realized this wasn't just any restaurant. "You're taking me to Le Sablon," she whispered. "It's quiet," he said. "Private. That place has a 3-month wait list. I know the chef." Of course he did. Inside, the lighting was low, the atmosphere hushed, no menus were offered. A server appeared immediately, pouring water into crystal glasses and murmuring something in French to Xavier before vanishing again. Kara leaned forward on her elbows. "So are you going to tell me what you actually do?" "I manage a few companies." She tilted her head. "You act like you work in a cubicle." "I don't. Let me guess," she said. "You own the cubicle." His lips curved faintly. "Many of them, in many countries," her breath caught. "Wait, you're serious?" He didn't answer. Instead, he passed her a small velvet box across the table. "Open it," she hesitated. "If there's a ring in here, I'm running." "Not a ring, just a peace offering." Inside was a delicate bracelet, gold, with a single lapis stone set at its center, simple, elegant, and clearly not cheap. "This is too much," she said quickly, pushing it back toward him. "You ruined my shirt. I'm evening the score." "I brought you coffee. That evens it." He didn't touch the box. "It's not about the cost, it's about the gesture." She studied him for a long moment. "You're used to people accepting expensive things from you, aren't you?" "I'm used to people expecting them." "And what about you? What do you expect?" "Honesty," he said quietly. "And unpredictability." "I get bored easily." Kara glanced down at the bracelet, then slipped it into her purse without another word. Dinner arrived in courses, each one more beautiful than the last. She tried duck for the first time, and he watched her reaction more closely than the food itself. They didn't talk about childhoods or dreams this time. Instead, "Why haven't you designed anything recently?" he asked. She frowned. "I never said I stopped. You said life got in the way, that's the same thing." She took a sip of wine. You don't even know what I can do. I've seen your sketches. Her fork paused halfway to her mouth. How? Your living room window was open. You left them on the table. You looked through my window. I walk past. I notice things. She set her fork down. That's not normal. No, he agreed, but I'm not normal. The tension between them sharpened, not uncomfortable but electric, the kind of tension that made the air feel too thin. You know, she said slowly, most people would try to impress someone with stories about their accomplishments. You're trying to impress me by being mysterious. I'm not trying to impress you at all, she blinked. Then what are you doing? Deciding. Deciding what, if I can trust you? She stared at him. Why wouldn't you? Because people want things from me, usually money, sometimes power. Occasionally both, she leaned back. You think I want either? I think you don't know what you want yet. That hit a little too close. She looked down at her plate. The silence stretched until the server returned with dessert, a single plate of something delicate and complicated looking, with 2 spoons. Xavier didn't touch his. You grew up here, but you don't sound like it, she said suddenly, needing to break the silence. I was sent away early. Boarding school, he nodded. Let me guess, Ivy League after that. No, I dropped out. Seriously, 3 weeks in, I hated being told what to do. Then how did you end up running companies? I started my own, she blinked. Just like that, borrowed startup money from someone who owed me a favor, built something, sold it, built again, repeat, she shook her head. That's not normal either. No, Kara, it's not. She didn't ask how much he was worth. She didn't want to know, not yet. When they left the restaurant, the driver opened the car door again, but Xavier didn't follow her in. Instead, he reached into his coat pocket and handed her a folded envelope. Open that when you get home. Are you always this dramatic, only when it matters? She stared at him, waiting for something else. But he simply nodded to the driver and turned away, disappearing around the corner like he hadn't just appended her entire understanding of reality. At home, she sat on her couch for a full 5 minutes before opening the envelope. Inside was a plane ticket. First class, New York to Paris. 1 week from that day, no message, just the ticket. Kara stared at it, heart pounding. And for the first time in years, she wasn't thinking about bills or rent or what was practical. She was thinking about jumping. Kara stood at the gate, staring out the window as the boarding call echoed through the terminal. A week had passed since that dinner, since Xavier had handed her a first-class ticket like it was a business card. She hadn't told anyone, not her roommate, not her sister, not the manager at Trendy Threads who had cocked an eyebrow when she requested time off with barely a reason. She still didn't know why she was doing this, but something about Xavier Lowell refused to be ignored. The flight was quiet. She didn't see him board, didn't see him at all. Not until the plane touched down at Charles de Gaulle, and she stepped into the arrival hall to find a man in a navy vest holding a sign with her name, not Kara, but Miss Linley, and leading her to a sleek car that waited outside the terminal. Paris was sharp and golden in the late afternoon light. The car wound past stone bridges and flower-covered balconies until it pulled up to a narrow, elegant building with wrought iron windows and tall double doors. The doorman greeted her like he'd been expecting her for days. Inside, the suite was almost too beautiful to exist, pale marble floors. Tall windows edged with velvet drapes, a balcony overlooking the Seine. On the bed was a note written in black ink on thick paper. Come upstairs, 5th floor, rooftop. Her pulse quickened. It took her a minute to find the elevator. When she reached the top floor, the doors opened to a quiet hallway ending in glass. She stepped through and found herself on a rooftop terrace strung with lights, the Eiffel Tower rising in the distance like something out of a dream. And there he was. Xavier stood in a navy shirt with the sleeves rolled up, one hand resting on the back of a wrought iron chair. He wasn't smiling, just watching her like she was the only person in the world capable of ruining or saving it. You came, he said. You didn't leave much room not to, you had a choice. So this is, what? She walked forward slowly. A vacation, a test, a beginning. Of what? He gestured for her to sit. What do you think? I think you're either the most romantic man I've ever met or the most dangerous. Maybe both. I don't even have a passport case, she muttered, sliding into the chair. He poured wine into her glass without asking. You've never been here, never left the country. I barely leave the city. Then we should change that. Why? Because you see things differently, he said. The world needs more of that. She looked at him, really looked. What did you bring me here for, Xavier? He leaned back. I want your help. With what? I'm launching a new division, luxury design, interiors, architecture, lifestyle spaces. I need someone who understands beauty without being trapped by it. Her brow furrowed. I sell discount cardigans. You sketch. You understand balance, texture. Movement. You've seen my sketches once. I remember what matters. She stared at him. This is insane. Only if it doesn't work. And if I say no, I'll take you to dinner instead. She laughed, almost against her will. So those are my options. Career opportunity or food, both come with me. She set her glass down. Why are you doing this? Because I don't meet people like you, he said simply. And when I do, I don't let them go. They sat in silence for a long moment, the lights of the city flickering below. She finally looked at him again. What are you afraid of? His jaw tightened slightly. Loyalty. She wasn't expecting that. You think I'll betray you? I think everyone has a price. Then why offer me one? Because you're the first person who didn't ask. Dinner was served on the terrace by a quiet man in a black suit who disappeared as quickly as he came. Kara didn't recognize half the food but tried everything anyway. Xavier watched her the same way he had before, but this time there was something else in his expression, an edge of vulnerability that hadn't been there in the restaurant back home. You've done this before, she said suddenly. What? Brought someone here, flown them across the world. He didn't deny it. Once. What happened? She married someone else. Kara blinked. Ouch. She wanted the lifestyle, not me. Did you love her? I don't think so. I think I loved the idea of her. Kara sat back, chewing slowly. Do you always offer jobs to women you date? I don't date, he said without hesitation. And this isn't a job, it's a partnership. You don't even know if I'm any good. I know enough. She shook her head. This is too much. Then tell me to stop. She couldn't. He stood and walked toward the edge of the terrace, resting his hands on the railing. You know what I noticed the first time I saw you? That I'm clumsy. That you didn't look away. She joined him at the railing. Most people probably stare. They either pretend not to recognize me or try too hard to impress me. You just looked angry your coffee was gone. She laughed. It was a good coffee. I'll buy you a better one. I don't think you understand how normal people operate. That's why I need you. She turned to face him fully. You're asking me to leave everything behind. My job, my apartment, my life. I'm asking you to build something new with a man I barely know. You'll know me. Will that help? I don't know, he said honestly, but I want to find out. She watched the way the city lights danced in his eyes. The man who seemed untouchable was suddenly more raw, more real than ever. Okay, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. He looked at her. Okay, I'll help. I'll see what this is. But not because of the bracelet or the plane or the view. Why then? Because I'm tired of watching other people live the life I want. And for the first time, his eyes softened in a way that made her breath catch. You won't regret it, he said. She wasn't sure if it was a promise or a warning. But she knew one thing, everything had just changed. Kara adjusted the strap of her satchel as she stepped into the converted Parisian loft, the one Xavier had secured as their design studio. Sunlight poured in through tall, arched windows, casting long shadows over the scattered fabric swatches, mood boards, and structural renderings pinned to the walls. It had been 3 weeks since she'd said yes on that rooftop, and the whirlwind hadn't stopped since. Xavier had given her full creative control over the first space. They were designing a hybrid lounge gallery for an exclusive client list that included European royalty and tech moguls. Kara had never so much as dreamt of touching a project of this scale. Now she was leading it. She brushed her fingers over a palette sample deep indigo, brushed brass, cream stone. You're not sleeping, came Xavier's voice from behind her. She didn't turn. Neither are you. I don't have that luxury right now. She finally looked over her shoulder. He was dressed in a dark charcoal shirt rolled to the elbows and slate trousers. his jacket tossed over a nearby chair. He'd taken to dressing more casually since they'd arrived, but nothing about him ever looked careless. His presence had a precision to it, measured, deliberate. She walked toward the floor-to-ceiling shelving unit, tugging out a design book. "You're avoiding something. I'm managing a dozen things." "That's not what I said." Xavier stepped closer. "What am I avoiding?" She closed the book, facing him fully. "Whatever's happening with your board." He paused, just long enough to confirm her suspicion. "It doesn't concern you. It does if they're trying to push you out." He studied her expression. "Who told you that?" "Nora. She didn't mean to." "It slipped." Xavier exhaled slowly, then walked to the window. "They're nervous. The design division isn't traditional. It doesn't guarantee immediate return." "Then why risk it?" He turned back to her. "Because I believe in it, and because I believe in you." Her throat tightened. "But they don't," he continued. "They think I'm distracted. With me. With the idea of change." Kara crossed her arms. "So what happens if they vote?" He looked at her like he was measuring the truth. "If they move against me, I'll lose controlling interest." "That's not just a business loss, Xavier. That's everything." "No," he said quietly, "not everything." The room fell into a charged silence. "I should have told you," he added, "but I didn't want you to think this was some kind of game." "It's not." "I don't think that," Kara said, her voice low, "but I'm not interested in being the reason you lose what you built. You're not the reason. You're the reason I'm fighting harder." She looked away, overwhelmed. "I wasn't expecting any of this. I know. I thought I'd be working retail forever, living in a walk-up, saving coupons." "You still can," he said, "but you don't have to." She shook her head. "That's not why I'm here. I know." There was movement at the door. Nora stepped in, tablet in hand, eyes flicking between them. "Sorry, client call in 10, and the architects need final approval on the ceiling structure." Xavier nodded. "I'll be there." Nora gave Kara a subtle glance before disappearing again. Kara walked to the drafting table. "So what happens next?" "We finish the space," he said. "We make it undeniable. And if the board still wants to make a move, I'll be ready." "You're not afraid?" "I'm used to being outnumbered." "That's not the same as being alone." He didn't reply. Instead, he walked to her, stopping just close enough for her to feel the warmth of his presence. "I don't need the company," he said. "I need something real." "And you think I'm that?" "I know you are." She stepped back. "Then start treating me like an equal." His brow lifted. "You said this was a partnership," Kara continued. "Then trust me with the truth, with the risks. Not just the design decisions." He tilted his head, then slowly nodded. "You're right. I usually am." He gave a low laugh. "I'll loop you into the strategy call this afternoon." "Thank you." He brushed a strand of hair from her face, then let his hand fall. "You're not what I expected, Kara. You're exactly what I feared," she said. "And I'm still standing here." That night, the gala was held at a chateau just outside Versailles, an unveiling for several of Xavier's current ventures, and a calculated opportunity to showcase the design division's first public concept. Kara wore a fitted midnight blue gown he'd had delivered to her suite that morning, along with a handwritten note, "For the woman who sees beauty where others see risk." The ballroom was a cascade of crystal, gold, and candlelight. Kara stood near the edge of the crowd, watching Xavier work the room. His confidence was a quiet weapon, never forced, never flashy. He spoke with intention, listened without interruption, and never once looked overwhelmed, even as executives and aristocrats circled him like sharks. She was about to turn away to find a drink when one of the board members approached her, a man in his late 60s with sharp eyes and a silver cufflink that glinted like a medal. "You're the designer," he said without introduction. Kara nodded. "Yes, you're the reason he's risking his empire." She didn't flinch. "No, he's the reason he's risking it." The man's lips pressed together. "He's emotional lately, that's new." "Maybe that's not a weakness," Kara said. "Maybe it's evolution." He gave her a long look. "We'll see." She found Xavier by the terrace later, his expression unreadable. "They're going to move," he said, voice low. "When?" "Monday," she swallowed. "What can we do?" "Nothing, it's done." "No, it's not." He turned to her. "You don't understand how this works." No, you don't understand me. I'm not going to watch you lose everything because people think you're too human to lead. He stepped closer. You'd fight for me. I already am. Monday came too quickly. Kara stood beside Xavier in the boardroom, eyes steady as the votes were cast. The room was cold, clinical. But when the final tally was announced, Xavier didn't flinch. Kara, he said, without looking away from the table, open the folder. She did. Inside were signed documents transfers of voting shares, a strategic acquisition, a merger that had closed just that morning. He looked up at the chairman, voice calm. I'm no longer answerable to this board. Silence fell like a dropped curtain. He turned to Kara, the only person in the room, smiling. Later, as the sun set over the Seine, Xavier took her hand on the same rooftop where it had all begun. Come with me, he said. Not for the job, not for the city, just for me. She leaned into him, heart steady. I already did. And this time there were no questions, no doubts, just the beginning of a life neither of them had expected but both now refused to live without. The narrow cobblestone street outside the atelier was quiet save for the occasional echo of footsteps and the distant hum of a city settling into dusk. Kara stood by the tall windows, the last of the evening light casting a golden sheen across the showroom's polished concrete floors. Their debut space, the lounge gallery hybrid, had officially opened the night before, and the response had been overwhelming. The media called it visionary, unapologetically modern, and a bold new language in luxury design. Orders were already coming in from Milan, Dubai, and Tokyo. But Kara couldn't focus on press buzz or client orders. Her thoughts were fixed on the moment in the boardroom Xavier had handed her the folder. She hadn't asked how he'd managed it, and he hadn't offered an explanation. She hadn't needed one. He'd taken every risk quietly, intentionally, and without once asking for credit. As the door clicked behind her, she turned to see him step inside. He changed into a dark cashmere sweater and slate trousers, his coat slung over one arm. His expression didn't carry the hard edges she'd seen in the boardroom. He looked content. I thought I'd find you here, he said. I couldn't sleep, she replied. I needed to see it again. Empty, quiet, he walked over, his pace unhurried. I've been thinking about what comes next, she turned toward him. Expansion, he shook his head. No, us, her breath caught slightly. What about us? There's no longer a board to answer to, no politics to navigate, no lines I have to pretend to stay inside. He stepped closer. I want to build something that doesn't require contingency plans. She looked up at him, heart knocking gently. Are you saying that as my business partner, or I stopped being just that the moment I bought back my controlling shares, he said. I did it so no one could ever threaten what matters again, and what matters is you. Kara didn't speak. She couldn't. Her throat tightened with emotion she didn't know how to name. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, square box, not velvet, but hand-carved wood, simple and beautiful. I didn't want to do this in a ballroom, he said. I didn't want an audience or 1,000 lights. I wanted it to be here, where this began, where we began. She opened the box with trembling fingers. Inside was a ring unlike any she'd ever seen, no giant diamond or flashy stones. Just a single sapphire set in a slender gold band, curved like brushstrokes. He didn't kneel. He didn't have to. I want you beside me, not because you said yes to a gallery or a trip or a job, but because you said yes to me when I had nothing to give you but uncertainty. When I was still trying to figure myself out. Yes, she whispered before he could even finish. Yes, Xavier, he let out a breath, almost a laugh, and slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. We'll still argue about fabric textures, she added softly. You'll still win, he replied. They stayed that way, the two of them standing in the space they had built, surrounded by the quiet echoes of their own creation. 3 months later, the wedding took place in a sun-drenched courtyard in Avignon. There were no headlines, no photographers, no curated guest list. Just Kara in a dress she had designed herself, linen silk, floor length, nothing flashy, and Xavier in a simple black suit, his tie abandoned halfway through dinner. Nora officiated, barely keeping it together as she read from a folded page. The vows were short and not rehearsed. Kara's hands shook when she said hers. Xavier's didn't, but his voice did. Afterward, they spent 2 weeks in a stone house in the hills of Provence where the only things to do were cook, walk, and sleep late. Kara filled a sketchbook. Xavier never opened his laptop once. On the last night, they sat under a sky full of stars, a bottle of wine between them, and talked about what they wanted to design next. "I want to build something different," she said, barefoot in the grass. "Something for people who think they don't belong in luxury. Who think it's not for them." He leaned back on his elbows. "A line that doesn't scream price tag exactly, a space that says you're allowed in." He reached for her hand. "Then we'll make it." They returned to Paris with a new plan. They launched the line under her name, Linley, and turned it into a foundation as much as a business. They partnered with artists from underserved communities, created internships for students without the means to afford design school, and opened their second showroom in a converted train station. People said it was impossible, that it wouldn't scale, that it wouldn't last, but it did, because everything they built together. And Xavier never once tried to rewrite her vision, he only made it louder. 2 years later, in the same rooftop studio where it had all started, Kara sat with their daughter asleep in her lap. The baby's tiny hand was wrapped around her mother's thumb, her breath soft and even. Xavier stepped in quietly, watching them for a moment before crossing the room. "She's definitely yours," he said softly. "Stubborn, refuses to sleep anywhere but your arms. She'll grow out of it." "I hope she doesn't," he said, kissing the top of Kara's head. "I like her exactly like this." Kara looked up at him, her eyes tired but full. "You happy, are you?" She nodded slowly. "More than I thought I could be." He sat beside her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. Outside, the lights of the city shimmered. But inside, everything was still. They didn't need chandeliers or rooftop proposals or first-class tickets anymore. They had each other, and that was more than enough.